In this video, we're going to be taking a look at building our folding bar. This all folds down, real simple, very easy to set up, very easy to haul. You can see we have some wing nuts on the back holding our front brackets in place to help support that overhang. These are a great seller for us. This is a 42-inch model that we're going to be building. And so that's our project. We do have a separate video on building the bar stools as well. Now that's a 24-inch tall bar stool, and really this bar requires a 30, but I didn't have a 30-inch bar stool on hand. So we'll take a look at all the parts that we need to cut for this particular project, and then we'll get to building. All right, let's take a look at our parts here. We have 13 pieces that are 42 inches in this case, because we're building a 42-inch bar. So we have 13 pieces that are 42 inches. We have 5 pieces that are 35 inches, and the reason they're 35 inches is because we can get 2 of these out of one 72-inch fence picket. And then that's going to leave us a whole bunch of these. So we're going to have a bunch of scraps, and these we're going to be using some of them, but we are going to have a lot of waste on this particular model. So that's something to keep in mind there. So we have 13 pickets we need here, and these we get 2 out of 1. So this is going to require an additional 3. So that's 16 pickets. So when you're going to buy materials, I say buy 20 pickets. We don't really need 20. We will need 1 additional picket for some cleats, because the cleat needs to be longer than our scrap, okay? So we'll need 1 additional picket for that. So all in all, again, we have 13 pickets here. We have 3 here, that's 16. So we could get by with 17 pickets. So I just say buy 20 in case you make a mistake or you don't like a particular board, you have a couple of scraps. And then we need to build 2 of these brackets for this particular model. Now, not all bars that we build have this big overhang out the front, but in this case, they wanted to be able to put some bar stools out front to be able to talk to customers and things. So we have an overhang. So this bracket here is 10 inches, and then this piece is 14 inches, okay? And then this piece from long point to long point is 8 inches. So that's a 45-degree miter there, okay? So we have to drill some bolt holes in these yet, but we'll get to that when we get to actually putting it on the bar and stuff like that. So I do have a separate video on making these little brackets if you really would like to see exactly how they're made. They're very simple. We have one 3.5-inch screw going from the top, and then from an angle. So it's pretty straightforward. And this is just some scraps. I have lots of scraps. So at any rate, our brackets are pre-made. Let's talk about some of the screws. I've kind of switched over to these screws. I bought these at Menards the other day. They're 1-inch screws. They're number 8s, and I like these a little bit better than these. These I found at Lowe's, and they are 1-inch screws, but they are number 6s. And so the number 8s are a little bit meatier, a little bit thicker. And then I like using the strap hinges. They're the most economical and best for this project. If you can find T-hinges that are less than $5 a pair, those would work okay too. Might be a little bit stronger than our strap hinges. I don't know about that. But anyhow, these are the 3-inch strap hinges. And then we're going to need I'm going to use our Ryobi cordless stapler with some 1-inch staples. And then I've got a impact with a T25 bit because these require T25. That's another reason I really like these, because these require T15, so it's a much smaller head. So, and then we have a piloting bit that we use when we're putting together our brackets. Okay, and you might want to use that piloting bit when we screw all this together. So I'll explain all that when we get to it. So with that said, what we're going to do first is on these boards here, okay, we need to rip 2 of them just right directly in half. That's going to be our trim boards. And these others, let me see if I got this right. So Yes, so we need 2 of these ripped in half. That'll give us 4 pieces that are 2 3/4. And then we need 2 of them that are 3 1/2. Actually, the 42-inch boards, I'm sorry. Not that, don't want to cut our top boards. These are for our top. So back to our 42s, we need to cut 2 of them directly in half. And then we need to cut 2 of them to the width of 3 1/2. And that will be our trim boards. So for the corner of our bar, there's some trim, and that will be our trim board. So we're gonna do that first, get those all cut down to size. And then we're gonna take a couple of these and we'll do 1 3/4. 3 pieces that are 1 3/4, okay? So let me go ahead and get that done, and then we'll move on to the next step. All right, so we've got our 2 3 1/2 inch pieces, which is gonna leave us an offcut of about 2 inches. And so what I did is I took that offcut and I ripped those to 1 3/4. And then I took 2 of my offcuts from a full picket on our 42-inch pieces and made these strips. So we get 3 1 3/4 strips out of each piece. So we'll use those cleats as well. And then of course we have our 2 3/4 trim pieces. There's 4 of those. Okay. So now I'm going to kind of clean off my work area here, and we'll start assembling our 2 sides and the front panel together. So first up is our 2 sides, and what we're going to do is we're going to put a cleat at the top and a cleat at the bottom, and then one towards the middle. We're going to come down from our top 17 inches, and that's where our cleat's going to go. Okay. Now, rather than give you a specific dimension in the plans, I like to just take my board, my little cleat board, line it up, and mark it the actual width. These fence pickets, depending on how wide of fence pickets you're using, in my case they're 5 1/2, but that's kind of a nominal dimension. It's not always exactly 5 1/2. It can differ actually from picket to picket, especially as it dries, it will shrink. So that's why I say just do a field dimension. So you can either run your tape or you can just scribe it, just line it up, make sure it's flush on this side, right? And then just mark it like I did. And then I'll make 2 of those for the top and the bottom. All right, so we have our top and bottom cleat in place, and our center cleat. Now we did come down from the top 17 inches and then just put our cleat. You can probably see those marks that we made. So just a couple of staples just to kind of hold this together. That will do the job. And then we will come back once we have all 3 of our assemblies. So we have 2 sides in the front. We'll come back and put in all our screws all at one time when we also attach the hinges. Okay, so now we need to make another panel just exactly like that one. So we got our hinges in place. Now I do use not the hinges that come with, but my 1-inch screws with the T25 head instead. So one at the top, one at the bottom, and then we'll slide all this over like so, and then we'll put our other panel on over here. All right, so now we have our 3 pieces put together here, and I've gone ahead and put in my 1-inch screws basically everywhere I had a staple. Okay, so there's 2 screws per board and so on. Okay, so that takes care of that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put on some trim boards. So we're going to start right here, put on a 2 3/4 trim board on this side and this side, and then we have to stand it up to put our front trim boards, or our other side boards rather. We have to stand it up to do that. So let me get our trim boards here and here, and then we'll kind of move on to the next step. All right, so now let me try and explain what we did here for our front. So what we're doing here, this is a 2 3/4 trim board, and I just took a block and put it right at the face and run our trim up to that block. 1 little staple there. Come up here, same thing. 1 little staple there, okay? And so we did that on both sides here. So if you look, that this trim board would be flush here, okay? And because there's a gap there, there's really no easy way to do that. So we grab our trim block, our little piece of, and you can see now that that trim is flush there. And again, we come up here, and so it's all flushed up, okay? And then I just use 4 staples for the time being. Now, the other thing I want to point out is that there's a bit of a recess here. So see that recess? So make sure you're not putting your staples towards the front, you're putting your staples towards the back. So it's actually going into this backer board. And then what we'll do from the inside is we'll put some screws in. I use 4 screws, and that will permanently attach those trim boards, okay? Now, for our 3.5 boards on the front, now we have something to align those two. So we'll go right flush to this edge, but we're gonna come this way 3.5 inches, okay? And then of course there's 2 of those. So we'll go ahead and tack those on as well. All right, we'll give you a quick tour now. So all of our trim pieces are in place, everything's lined up, but let me show you screw locations. So you can see here, we've got these 2 screws here, and I come up a little ways just above the shelf and up top, okay? And that's gonna hold all of our trim pieces in. So this side's done the exact same way, okay? So now we're gonna make our shelf. So we're gonna take a measurement right from the inside here to inside here. Now previously on the first one I made, that was 30 inches, but that can change just a bit. So we're gonna do a field dimension there, make sure our shelf will fit. I make it about 1/8 of an inch less than whatever that dimension is. So I'll get that dimension, and then we'll cut 2 boards for our shelf. All right, so it did turn out that 30 inches was the magic number for this shelf as well. So we cut 2 pieces of our fence picket material to 30 inches. Now our cutoffs that we use on our 42s are not big enough. So that's a bummer. But, so we just used 1 extra picket. We got our 2 30-inch pieces off of that. And then I did have to cut another one of our cutoffs because I ran out of this 1 3/4 cleats. So anyhow, so we put 1 full cleat, the full width here on one end, on the other, and then our in-between pieces. And then this I put in there just to hold these boards together here in the center. And then you can also see, so we initially stapled it all together, and then we came back with screws everywhere to hold that cleat all together. So you definitely do want to use screws. I had initially, when I first started building these, I thought the staples and wood glue would be enough, and it turns out the durability just is not there with staples and glue alone. So now I don't use glue and just screw everything together. And it seems to work just fine. Like, I've had bars that been sitting outside for a long time and look just as good as they did the day I built them. So now I am going to do a light sand on this, round over all the edges just a little bit. And then our next step will be going ahead and mounting our brackets. So these brackets, we've got to drill some holes in those brackets, and then we'll mount the brackets to the bar, okay? So let me go ahead and get this all sanded up. We'll move our bar down, and then we'll talk about installing the brackets. All right, so what I did here is I took my 2 brackets, put them side by side, and measured up 2 and measured up 8, and then drew a line. And then I'll kind of use those lines as a guide to where I'm going to drill my holes for my bolts. Now I'm going to be drilling 3/8 inch holes. I'm going to be using this bit to do it. This is a pocket hole bit for when we're doing pocket holes, but it just happens to be 3/8 of an inch in diameter. So I'll go ahead and use that and drill those holes out. And then we're going to be using 5/16" bolts. And the reason we're doing that, we're drilling 3/8 holes, but using 5/16 bolts is so that they'll slide in and out really easily. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to get our holes drilled here, and then once our holes are drilled here, we can go over to the bar and drill the corresponding holes over at the bar. All right, so to install our brackets, pretty straightforward. But one thing that we need to do is we need to lower those brackets down the thickness of a fence picket. So what I do is I just take a little piece of scrap of my fence picket, and you can see that that's flush, okay? And so then just drill it 1 3/8" hole, and then go ahead and put your bolts in, and then go ahead and put your next one in. And you can see the same thing over here. That's flush, so that's where we want that bracket. And then we'll go ahead and drill your holes. Now, because these holes may differ slightly from piece to piece, it's probably not a bad idea to put right side, left side, right up top here. So I will grab a pencil and write that on there so that when we go to reassemble this, it'll be real easy. We know that this is the left and that's the right. And then the holes will all line up exactly perfectly. Now, for the next thing we need to do, in order to make our top, we need to know exactly how deep it is from the very back to the very front, and likewise from the outside trim board to outside trim board. Okay, so we need to know those exact dimensions. Now in my case, on the original one, it was 14 inches front to back, and then side to side I believe was 32.5. So I need to know what this dimension is, and then we're going to add just a little bit more to it. So usually I take whatever that dimension is and then make it a 1/2 inch bigger. This would give me a 1/4 inch play, left to right and front to back. And I'll explain that in more detail when we actually go make our top for this, okay? It'll make more sense. So for right now though, what we need to do is, again, we're going to measure what it is, and then I'll let you know what it is, and then we'll use those dimensions when we go to make our top. All right, so I did my measurements, and from outside of trim board to outside of trim board, we have 32 3/8, okay? And then from front to back, we have 13 3/8. Now I know when I did the previous bar, you see this cleat right here? So we have 5 boards deep, and then we have this little cleat that holds those 5 boards together. That was 1.1 inches, okay? So when we do the math, if this is 32 3/8, and that will clear it, but just clear it, okay? So it's just a fraction less than that. But I know if you take 32 3/8 and you subtract that from 35, that's going to leave you 2 5/8, okay? So point is, if we do 1.1 cleat on this one, just like we did over here, then that will give us just enough wiggle room left to right to make it all work. Now front to back, 13 3/8, if we make that dimension 14 like we did on this one, if we do that again, that will give us a fair bit of play front to back. All right, so again, just kind of put this off in your memory, because none of this is going to make sense until we actually get to the table, lay out our top, and you have a better understanding of what in the world I'm talking about. So let's go ahead and take a look at our top, and we'll explain how all this is going to work. This is a piece of our cutoff. When we made our 42-inch pieces for our bar, this is what's left over, and luckily for us, that is plenty long to put those 5 boards together. So we can use a piece of our scrap here, which I've already cut my cleats here. So we're going to rip these down. I had already previously ripped these down to 1 3/4 inch, but I'm gonna have to rip some of this off. So we need this to be 1 1/8 inch thick. So both of these will have to be cut 1 1/8 inch. That'll be our first step. That'll hold these 5 boards together, okay? So I am going to staple these together, and cut these to length, and cut these to width, and get them put on here. All right, so we've got our 1 1/8 inch cleats on both sides here. And you know something I didn't do, and I should, is let me just make sure, because we were at 32 3/8, and now we are at 32 3/4. Okay, so what that tells me, of course, is that we do have just enough distance. Okay, so what we're doing is we're creating this cleat so that top will sit down on top of our base, so it's easy to center, you know, when you go to set this thing up, because it'll only go lock in, you know, one way, so it won't be able to go front to back. The overhang on the back is going to be 2 3/4. We used a 2 3/4 cleat here. Now, I let my OCD get the best of me. And what I mean by that is we have enough cutoffs where we could make a bunch of these 2 3/4 strips, and we could have pieced it across the front here. But instead, I used a whole new picket, ripped it in two so that it was continuous. So you have plenty of leftover scrap to make that front cleat, make all the rest of these cleats that we're going to be making. Okay, now 14 inches just happens to work out to be right there at that crack, right there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put that board just slightly over that crack. And the reason I'm going to do that is so that this board and this board doesn't have a tendency to sag. Okay, it's a little difficult to explain, but that board will have a tendency to sag. Now here we're gonna screw all these boards together because we're gonna have a cleat here in the middle that'll hold all those together. So that's just a little side point. And this will also have an additional cleat as well, which you'll see it all here once we get it all together. So at this point, I just have everything stapled in place, and then I'm gonna come back in and put in all of our screws. So again, we're just going to cover that crack maybe 1/8 inch and go ahead and mount that board in place. And then we'll have an outside cleat here, and then we'll have one more cleat down the middle and going this way. So I'm going to go ahead and get those in place, and then I'll kind of show you what the finished product looks like. All right, so now all of our cleats are in place as they need to be. So this one is just centered and is 11.5 inches, and its purpose is to hold these 3 boards together. Okay, then we have this one at that 14 clear or thereabouts, 2 3/4 cleat on the front edge, and then we use some of our cutoffs. Yes, I let my OCD go for this one. It's not one continuous board, so we just use scraps just to fill in that gap there. Okay, and so our brackets are going to sit right, that's why we wanted that, right on this flush surface here. Now, we had to hold this back a little bit because of that front panel, okay, is going to sit on here. So that's why that's back just a little bit. So this was 14, so I came back 2.5 inches. Okay, so if you differ your bar a little bit and make it deeper or something, it's just this cleat is 2.5 inches less of the overall. Okay, so now all that's together. So now the only thing left to do is go and screw all that down. So basically everywhere I use the staple, I'm going to go back in and use a screw it all together, give everything a nice little round over, a nice little sandy sand, and then our bar will be complete. So let me go ahead and get all that done, and we'll show you what the finished product looks like when it's on the bar. So there you have it, the finished bar. And I want to point out some things in regards to the cleat system. Hopefully you can kind of see this. So you see how I was talking about those are sitting right on that big cleat that we put in front there. But you see right here how that kind of sets in. So we don't have much wiggle room left to right nor front to back, but we have just enough. So if we come over here, you can see as well, right? So not much wiggle room front to back, not much left to right. And let's just come around the back side here so we can see this, what I was talking about here with that center cleat being held back. It fits in there just perfectly. So you can kind of see how that cleat will help us center it. And also these cannot go out because it's being blocked by that cleat right there. So it all kind of works to all contain it all together and makes for a really nice simple bar setup. Now, one thing that I'll just throw out there as an idea for you from a marketing perspective. Now, this particular customer actually wants a bigger bar. So I might go ahead and make him another option. So one option that I'll throw out there is you could have two separate bars like this, but you could also have a big bar. So you could separate these and have one long continuous bar top. You wouldn't have to use fence pickets. You could use 2x6s or 2x8s and make a big bar that way. But you could also make some smaller brackets, right? And you could mount them right here between the two bars. So if we put two of those brackets here and two of those brackets on that one, then you could have a shelf going across between them. Well, there you have it, the completed bar. And you can see that cleat system. Hopefully, let me get a good view of it. So you see how that cleat is sitting down, and so there's not much wiggle room front to back or left to right. And come over here and you'll see the same thing. Not much wiggle room left to right, front to back. Let's go ahead and take a look at the back side here. And that center cleat, you can see while we held it back, and it fits in there perfectly. And then same thing over here. And by having this cleat on the outside here, that keeps our side panels from splaying out. So it all kind of is contained that way. Now, a couple things I should point out. Now, this particular customer required two bars. They really were interested in a 6-foot bar, but I was like, well, maybe 2 3-foot bars would be better. So what we could do here is we could get rid of these bar tops and make one long continuous bar top. Could be 6 foot, could be 8 foot, could be whatever we wanted it to be. So that's another option for the customer that I'm going to throw out at him when he comes to pick these up, is having an additional top, but a big top, because he originally wanted a 6-foot bar. But the other option I'm going to throw at him is these brackets. So if we took these brackets and made a little bit smaller version of them for the side, 2 on this side, 2 on that side, then we could have a top that would go across the two. And that top could be 4 foot, 5 foot, 6 foot, whatever you wanted. So you'd have 2 3-foot bars on either side, and then you'd have this bar in the middle. And that bar in the middle could be at a standard counter height of 3 foot. So I might just go ahead and make some extra brackets and throw that idea at him, and that will give us an opportunity for an upsell there, because might even go ahead and make another top just to show him that could be an option that he might want, because again, he wanted a bigger bar to begin with. So those are just some options, some selling options. But if we kind of revamp, when we talk about cost, our cost is about, let's just say it's 60 bucks. It's really not quite that much. So each fence picket is $2.18. And at least that's what I'm paying right now. And we use, let's just say 20. So let's just round figure in, 20 times 2 obviously is $40. We've got some screws, we got some bolts, we got some wing nuts. That's where the other 20 bucks comes into play. So you've got about $60 in material, and typically I will sell these bars somewhere between $159 and $189. Now this one will be at the $189 marker because it does have the brackets and the bolts and things. It does have some extra options. Now a traditional bar that would not overhang this much, usually I sell those for $159. And then we also have a topper, kind of similar to that topper over there, that we make for these bars as well. Again, another opportunity for an upsell there. Either a sign topper or a roof topper. Now that one is a roof topper without the roof right now, but it's just another option to upsell. So there you go. And of course you can also upsell with the stools. Now this is not the right stool for this bar because this is a 24-inch stool, and really these bars require a 30-inch stool. And like I said before, we do have a video on making those stools. But again, if you show your customer, they come to pick them up, you know, we've got it staged up, we've got the stool there, they're like, ooh, I want stools too. Another opportunity for an upsell there. Okay, so that's it. That's all there is to this one. I hope you enjoyed it. And now we make little ones, 24-inch height for the little kids for lemonade stands. Those sell real well for us. And then we have a 30-inch for a little bit bigger kid. And then of course the 36, and this of course is our 42. So thanks for watching.